Good morning. Welcome to the Streets and Sanitation Committee. It's April 8th. We have a full house today and a full agenda, so I'm going to turn it over to Troy. Troy, let you roll.
What do you want to talk about first, Joe?
It doesn't matter.
Streets or sanitation?
Sanitation.
All right, sanitation. Biggest thing in sanitation is, I guess, everything looks good in their expenses. Their revenues are trending good. We did receive a grant
Yes.
for up to $500,000. So the way the grant works, it's a reimbursement grant. So we've spent about 900,000, almost $1 million on totes, the trailer, the building, all that good stuff. So we have to spend another approximately $500,000 to get the $500,000 reimbursement. So things that we asked for. We asked for the $200,000 that we still owe the county. We asked for another mini excavator. We asked for,
Not another one. The
oh,
original
that's one that was a reimbursement. So we asked for the recycle trailers.
Four.
How much were those trailers apiece?
They were like, I think a total of 4 of them was 83,000. They were about,
Or that was 2 of them, was 80.
It was 4.
Four?
they were like 23,000 a piece or something like that.
Truck.
And then the truck.
The tractor to pull the trailer. Those were our, so you guys get to decide. Well, we have to spend it all to get it all back. So we have to spend, I think, 1.3.
Okay, we've already bought the mini excavator. We spent that. Why don't we get it back?
You do.
Oh, okay.
Pardon?
They're gonna reimburse for everything that you've already spent.
Oh, okay.
Plus, so
I missed
ultimately
that.
you have to spend another $435,000
You need
to
to-
get $500,000, the full $500,000.
So we have
It's
to
at
spend how much?
35%.
It's 35%.
You
of
get
the total
35% of
Because they are reimbursing.
Yes.
I misunderstood that.
Yeah, me too.
But you only get a third back. We have to put 35% towards anything. So what Chandra and Troy are saying, to get to 1.45 million, 1.5 million, to get 500,000, we've spent just under $1 million. Just over $1 million, excuse me. We need to spend 500,000 to get 500,000 back. That you're not going to get
So
any
we satisfied the copay already.
if you get to
Yeah.
1.5.
If you wanna look at it like that,
Yep.
we satisfied the copay, so we get $500,000 grant, we gotta spend $500,000 to get the 500,000.
Yeah.
Correct.
So everything we're doing right now is
Yeah.
cover the copay. Best way for me to look at it. Okay.
We submitted
We have to
for-
spend
The
65%.
total amount that we submitted for was like 1.9.
Yep.
That was with everything, everything plus reimbursement for everything. They gave us 500,000, so we're not gonna get reimbursed for anything that we've spent to date, but we can get, if you wanna say, it won't cost us any more to add on $500,000 worth of equipment, but we have to spend it first and then they reimburse us for it.
So let's talk about needs between the two of you.
So you can only spend it on what you submitted.
Right.
So the only things you can spend it on are the 200,000 to the county, the 4 recycle trailers, and the truck.
She made
What's
it
that
pretty
total up
simple.
to?
It's 400 and, so it's 200,000 to the county, 160 for the truck, and then approximately 80 for the 4 trailers.
And that math was for,
435, 445.
so that's the max we can get then.
Yep.
Well, that makes it simple.
Yep.
Everything else we bought last year, they said, yep,
That's
go
all.
for it. So in order to get the full amount, you have to buy those three things.
What you're basically seeing, it's a nod of confidence in the direction we're going. They like what's happening. They took a look at our needs, saw that our sanitation department needs a truck to haul to Buckwana. That's a need that would cost us out of pocket that they're gonna help us with. The recycling, we've made a real push towards that. These recycling trailers that we could place around town.
Like them.
Yeah, it gives us an opportunity to free up a little bit of the workload out there, all the sorting, by allowing the public to participate and sort their own. And,
It sure could reduce the amount of garbage too.
yes,
Yes,
great point.
yeah.
And as far as the bill to Tripp County, you're just freeing up $20,000 a year in your budget for the next 10 years by paying this off now. Better to pay your bills off.
Yes, I agree.
So, obviously, everybody knows I'm running for county commissioner, so I will recuse myself from the decision on that part.
Actually, you don't have to.
I.
You can abstain.
Abstain.
He's
Yeah.
correct, you don't have to, but it's one of those things,
Yeah.
you will begin to make your own
Probably
decision.
should.
Yeah, I don't want to be part of that.
It's gonna be a councilman and a commissioner, just so you know,
As
Jake.
far as recusing yourself from what
Man of the
vote, there's no
public.
vote on paying off the 200,000. Is there?
What's that?
Well, there'll
It
be
just
a,
goes into claims.
When there's a vote.
true,
Yeah, so it'd just be.
there's a vote on the claim, yeah, that'll be the only vote.
Whatever it is,
From
decision
Marty.
in committee, how that goes forward, there's no decision to be made, obviously, you just said it.
No.
You'll just have to make,
Yeah.
basically to accept the grant as a councilman.
So operationally, when does our contract on our long haul to Buckwana end, the current one?
6 months.
May, right?
In May.
Yeah, end of May.
Is there any chance of going to bid and getting this truck purchased before the end of that contract, or are we going out to the end of the year?
I don't think we've got any paperwork from the state on the grant yet.
Been waiting for it.
So we're looking at a January 1 purchase or December 31st? Do we have to spend it this year?
Yeah, you have to spend it this year, I believe. You have a little more, maybe knowledge on it, but that's the hard part. I can't give you exacts because they haven't given us the official, here's your paperwork to approve it with all the little fine details in it, so.
So can we get a truck by December 31st if we go to bid this fall?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna issue one more contract, is the way it's looking.
Depends.
I assume you're gonna be able to get a bid, off either the state bid list or Sourcewell or something.
Yeah, just the biggest thing will be availability, if
Right.
there's one out there.
Right.
Just a day cab.
But
What's the chances of one being available by May 1st?
I have no idea.
Okay. Something to look at.
I would think we should have that paperwork before our first meeting of May. I would think. I'm surprised I don't have it yet, honestly, since it was the end of March that they approved it, but
Yeah, it's usually 4 to 6 weeks.
is
so,
it okay?
yeah. I mean, just procedural stuff on the state side.
Right.
So big things happen without you, Commissioner.
Big things happening without you.
That's about all I have in sanitation. We're pretty
Good
much
news.
normal. You got anything on sanitation to bring up? I haven't heard anything. Pretty quiet over there.
So far, so good.
Streets, however, started talking to DB this week about some miscellaneous concrete projects. So we got touched base with Jake on a couple of these. One is over in front of Melly's Automotive, his fix-it shop over there. I tried to get that, we did try it last year to get that changed ordered into to the project, and it wasn't gonna work. So there's two places. One's in front of, across the street from Casey's. There's a valley gutter there that's in pretty bad shape, and then over in front of Mel's, since we resurfaced the street over there, that's right in front of his building. It's just been a bad deal anyways, so when Jake's gonna have a crew in town here in the near future, they're gonna shoot that. We're gonna get to work on that one. This radius right out here on Third and Van Buren, I got that on my list, and then down there by the Mead Lumber, we got a curb and gutter down there, radius that's just falling apart, and we've got a fire hydrant, leaky fire hydrant to address down there when the weather straightens out a little bit. But so we've discussed the possibility, Jake and I, about not getting the public access grant. And moving forward with some kind of a project on Monroe Street. So that's why he's here today, to talk to you a little bit about that. It's all yours, buddy.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys have seen the exhibit, that kind of the phasing deal that Troy and I put together. I don't know if I got enough copies here, but I can pass it around. It's the last page of that. So more or less what we're looking at is kind of prioritizing the segments, blocks, if you will, on Monroe Street and the adjoining streets, and, you know, kind of doing a priority list. How we're orchestrating it as of now is kind of calling it a Phase 1A, which would be the 2 blocks of Monroe between the highway and 4th Street. That would be priority number 1. And then Phase 1B would be the block north of the highway, and then the block on the west side of the city. What's that, Van Buren over there? That would be Phase 1B, and then the, yep, and then the 3rd and 4th Street adjacent to Monroe would be considered Phase 2. Phase 2 isn't necessarily what we're looking to scope and do an immediate project, but rather just kind of, as we design the Monroe Street improvements, we would take into account, you know, the adjoining streets to make sure that we're setting ourselves up appropriately for any improvements there in the future. But more or less what that would look like is, as we understand it, there's desires to move forward with Monroe Street improvements to some level, regardless of any outside funding. So Phase 1A would be kind of that scenario, where we get those 2 blocks constructed, figure that into the 2025 budget. If the $600,000 grant comes into fruition, which we will know in November, we would then look at adding Phase 1B into the project and doing 4 blocks in 2025. So essentially, you know, you're gonna double the cost of your project, but the idea is that that grant's gonna cover that increase. So, you know, it might otherwise be a $600,000-$700,000 project if you do it all. You know, it's a $1.3 million project, but you
think 1A 6 to 7 with us doing, is that with us doing the part of our work, or is that hiring it all out?
that would be a probably more appropriate number for the contractor to install the water. Would be about 300,000 a block. It's kind of what we,
For the water, you said?
for the water and the,
Water.
yeah, water and the street. Yep, per block.
So that's 6 to 7 is for them. That's with us doing the prep work, widening dirt and whatever, right?
Well, that would be full extent of the work, bidding that out for the,
Did you think, Troy, that our guys can do some of it?
Well, so it's, I think you'll agree with me on this, but what'll happen if we get the grant money?
Right, I understand that.
It'll be bid out. And we'll probably have to bid, they may let us take some of that stuff out, but we'll have to probably bid the whole project because we'll be getting the federal money. So they've got, I don't know how much they'll allow us to do. Yeah, it'd be no-brainer for us to do it if we can, save us that money. I mean, I think we can do the removal, we can do the water, water main replacement, all that good stuff, but.
What's that number if we do that?
oh, you're probably, I mean, the water's not a significant portion of it. I mean, most of your cost is gonna be in the servicing above it, but I mean, you could save 150,000 by doing the water.
Okay.
I'm saying the water is that much money, you know, I don't know how much input costs you guys would have if you do it as a city. And, you know, to Troy's point, the scoring system of the grant allows for the utilities to not be a part of the project, but they have to have been replaced in the new within the last 5 years in order to get 50 points on your scoring sheet. And in our experience, without those 50 points for utilities, you're not gonna get the grant. So yes, the city can do the water, but it has to be, you know, known and explicit that, you know, water will be replaced in order to.
Jake, I think
Get
you
this
understand where I'm going with this. I don't know how our success rate has been at getting these grants for this type of project.
Yep.
Minimal, I'd say. Is that correct to say? So I just want to know, in my mind, as we're getting ready to go forward in the budgeting for 25, assuming, I understand if we get the grant, okay, we got to hire it all done, most likely. If we don't get the grant, what's the range that we would need to have in the budget for Monroe Street to do 1A?
You're looking at,
500, 600,
I'd say a minimum of $500,000.
5 to 6?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead, sorry. That's
No,
what I want to know.
Yeah, and, you know, I think the utilities, considering there's no sewer, you know, feasible and appropriate for the city to do that. You start looking at the prep work and all that. I would advise that the contractor does that. As for, you know, if they're gonna be constructing the road above subgrade and, you know, in that, as it relates to kind of warranties and, you know, that type of thing, it's best to keep like scope of work within the same contract. You know, it's, you know, contractor's not gonna wanna warranty their asphalt, you know, if,
Over somebody else's subdivision.
over somebody else's subdivision.
Understand.
So, yeah, you know, so, and you're gonna get more competitive bidding if there's more work for them to do rather than, you know, come in and do one piece of it, but. And regardless of the funding or not, the cost and size of the project's gonna warrant a bid letting regardless. I mean, it's gonna be over $100,000, which is the bid threshold, so it'd just be a matter of what's included in that scope, that's bid.
So basically, we still want to get something done on Monroe next year. So we want to, you know, we want to have a plan put in place, so that we can, you know, if we don't get the grant, we definitely want to, you know, ask for, you know, this much money to do something for Monroe. I know I'll ask it. We had talked about it a long time ago. Just kind of sticking with our process of milling and overlaying. So I did check in onto that, and that is a possibility to just mill the driving lanes of Monroe and put another 2-inch asphalt mat on it. I know we've identified other issues with Monroe Street that,
Are important, but are still secondary issues, I'd say.
yeah, I mean, you're gonna be putting a Band-Aid on it at
Right.
best. So you got the parking lanes to deal with, you've got outside the parking lanes where you've got sidewalk. We've had several residents that have came forward and requested, you know, that we kind of redesign the street a little bit for better parking, kind of something similar to what we did up there by the post office. It's a lot of money though. I mean, it's gonna add up fast with the project. So just want to talk it over and make sure that everybody's in agreement with what we do.
What's the cost to mill and overlay?
It's last year it was, so just an asphalt milling was $2 a cubic, or
Concrete will be different though.
concrete was like eight and a half, so figure $9 this year to do concrete versus asphalt.
Milling,
Yeah,
diamond, is that diamond grind?
yeah, well,
It's It's just like we do on the asphalt. You're gonna mill it's just,
Okay,
it's a
yeah,
much
okay.
slower
You can mill
process. And,
concrete.
it's the same result. Same result. You're gonna
Estimated
mill off
dollar.
2 inches of concrete and you're gonna put down 2 inches of asphalt.
What's that number?
I don't have any, I haven't figured any of this
Measurements.
out. We're just, I mean,
I hear
It's about 350,000 is where we were at to do that with,
To just do the driving surface, we think we could do it for 350.
Correct.
If we did the project 1A ourselves, 600,000. If we get the grant, we look at, well, we're still 600,000.
but the thing,
Right.
the thing that, no matter what we do with this, you've placed, this is where you as council, a sitting council, will have to make a decision. We've got a plan to replace 22 blocks of streets in the city of Winter every year. We have a $600,000 budget. That was $600,000 a couple of years ago. It's probably getting closer to 700,000 with the new economy cost. So are we going to kill our residential program? Is that what the public wants to hear from us? Or are we going to do this on top of what we've already committed to doing? I understand it's a Band-Aid. Every one of the asphalt streets that we put down, Jake, you would say is a Band-Aid. It's got a 10 to 12-year life. If we're good, we might extend it to 35 like we have in the past. But realistically, we could do the driving surface and put together a 5 to 10-year plan, apply for grants, and if we were awarded, then we could have a, sitting on the shelf, oh, we got the grant, let's pull it out, we're good to go.
Well, yeah,
Is
the
that
grant
the-
would have, I mean, it has an expiration date on the grant, so I mean, you know, you'd have, I don't know what that exact timeframe is, 2 to 3 years, we can
Yeah.
assume.
But if we're applying every year and
Right.
suddenly we're awarded it, then that gives us a 3-year window to put together a plan as a council. Okay, we're gonna take off the Band-Aid we put on and we're gonna reconstruct this whole joint.
Yeah, the risky run there is, you know, doing the Band-Aid and then you get the grant sooner than you
The
think.
next year.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, you know, maybe. it
But
wasn't
we've
my-
established minimal.
Yeah, and, you know, I would say, you know, the streets that have been done in the past, residential mill overlays, you know, all those streets were appropriate for an overlay. Troy and I looked at Monroe, well, I guess it was last fall now, you know, kind of with that same thought in mind, and there's just some challenges there with drainage and sidewalk and all that, like, you know, stuff you mentioned, where it'd be tough for me to recommend milling and overlay of those blocks because it's just gonna be tough
The
to,
joints have all pulled apart.
Yeah,
Our
right.
subgrade might be absolutely
Yeah.
destroyed underneath.
yeah, those, you know, where you see the big separations in the
Yeah.
concrete, that stuff's gonna show through that asphalt after one winter. I mean, there's just no way.
After
really
one
around.
winter?
After one
As early
winter.
as one winter, yeah. It's just,
Okay?
concrete mill and overlays are appropriate when the, you know, subgrade is adequate and you just have, you know, surface imperfections, but you know, 80% of that, those segments fall in that category, but it's the 20% that are beyond that point that are,
This one's like in a 5%.
yeah.
So it is bad.
well, the difference between this street and like doing a residential street, you mill off 2 inches, you're going gutter to gutter. So you can, if you get in there and crack seal it and do what you're supposed to do with it, you can seal the street up. Because you've got concrete over here, you've got concrete over here, you seal that joint up. Now you've protected the street. You've got curb, you got curb and gutter, you've got a sealed up joint between the asphalt and the concrete. There's no way for the moisture to get in. It's kind of tough to do that over here because you've got so many cracks in the parking surfaces there's just so many imperfections in that street, you're never gonna keep the moisture from getting underneath that street.
Let's go curb to curb.
There's no curb and gutter. It's just parking surfaces that's full of cracks that.
On that first block.
Yeah.
Yeah, that first block south of the highways are
Big one.
biggest issue there with that. I mean, and the, you know, the flow paths aren't in an appropriate spot. It's just,
So with the numbers that we got this year, and then assuming that the milling would be $9 It's to do 2 blocks, would be about 68,000 to 70,000,
To grind it or asphalt?
just to mill it and overlay it. So about 35,000 a block for that process of milling and overlaying on that concrete surface. And I think our asphalt lab has been averaging about 22,000 a block.
Last year was 25, but this year the bid's gonna come down. The bid amount was a little less.
Since, yeah, over the years, I mean, since we've been doing this last 4 or 5 years, I think I can,
Actually, it was like 28 last year.
it's been coming in right around in that 22 to 23,000 a block. $10,000 more a block. Which is the milling part of it.
There's no sewer,
No sewer in the street.
so we're looking at water. That's
Water,
the
yeah, and-
big thing.
Troy and Kelly might know better than I, but I think part of that would be actually adding water loop between Fourth and Third, right? That doesn't exist right now.
Right.
Well, we have to tear up this intersection on 4th Street because we've got, we know we have some old cast iron underneath there. So we got to get that, cut that out, get that replaced, and then it would just make sense to go down 4th Street and loop it in instead of having a dead end.
There's no water south of the highway?
Yeah,
There is, yep.
There is. But was that replaced in the
that comes
highway
off 1st
project?
Street.
They just stubbed out
They
of the
stubbed it.
highway and connected it, so we take it from there and replace the entire block.
Sochkins is off the highway, CCI is off the highway, and then there's a water main down on 1st Street.
That comes right down the middle.
There's nothing that goes down Monroe, or there's no water main going down Monroe from north to south.
There's none?
No.
So how about coming south from that intersection? You're talking about?
Yeah, there's one block, from the highway to 3rd, there's a block of water main there.
So the loop would actually include Third Street and going all the way down and around? Okay.
Basically, the biggest benefit would be to dig it up on that block, on the block of 4th Street and the block of 3rd Street, and put a valve in, or 2 valves on both intersections so you can shut down blocks at a time. That's basically the reason we do it. So that you've got the ability to just kill a block of line instead of having to kill like an actual whole city block or more. That would be the biggest benefit to it.
And it's not dead-ended, right? That's a loop. It just don't set. Right now, it just stops there at the post office. It's a dead end.
Goes south, goes right up the middle of Monroe,
We replaced that.
up to 5th and then up to 6th, but we've replaced that.
But is it a loop or is it just a dead end there?
It's an L.
It loops back to.
Well, right now it's a
loops
dead
back
end
to
because
Main
it's.
That's what I'm saying. You don't want dead-end water, right?
Yeah, we
You like-
we couldn't connect anything. We didn't go into the concrete
Yep.
intersection.
Jake, I was gonna ask you, circling back to the earlier discussion where we were talking about the requirements, if we have a federal grant involved, that means certain things have to be bid out. We're not gonna be able to do the entire thing that's being being applied for a grant. You're gonna have to have a contractor. And my impression is that requires that that contractor be the prime contractor on that portion of the job. Does that make sense?
Correct, yep, yeah, yep.
So my question then would be, under that scenario, are there still portions of that prime contract that the city could make an agreement with the contractor that the city does a portion of that underneath, that where it's still the contractor's job, but the city basically it does some of it.
Yeah, and the way that would be set up in the bidding documents would just be furnisher owner performed work.
And that doesn't affect the viability as far as the grant goes.
No, you would just, for the project or the funding eligible expenses, which aren't utilities, it would be the surfacing above it. That would be a part of the
Okay,
contract. I don't believe the owner could perform the funding eligible cost, because the water's not gonna be reimbursed anyway.
right.
You know, you get points for doing it as far as the application goes, you know, so it's advantageous to do the utilities, but that's gonna be an out-of-pocket expense, whether you're paying a contractor to do it or the city to do it. It's the eligible expenses, curb and gutter, asphalt, base course,
Sure.
that
Okay.
would be a part of that prime contract. Yep.
Okay.
Jody.
Yep.
Chandra, Troy, whoever, everyone. My mind, and I want Hawkins' opinion too, but my mind is, and I want someone to tell me if there's a way within our city finances that we can leave $600,000 in the 2025 budget for continuing our mill and overlay projects around the community, and also build in $600,000 for the Monroe Street project. Is there any way we can possibly fund that lofty goal?
Yeah,
We also have a $19 million electrical project that we're wanting to start on. So, I mean,
yes, but
it'll be
This is
creative.
1 year.
there's a lot of projects actually that the city of Winter, not just to mention, just not even everything DGR is involved in. There's several other projects that we're looking at too across the city in the next 5 years down at the airport that Helms is involved in currently, and with our bill money and all of that. So there's just so many projects that the city of Winter is looking at that, I mean, I have it laid out for you guys of what's going on. You know, you've got this possible walking trail project up on 7th Street. So you just have to prioritize where you want your money to go. Because I could say yes to this, but then I would have to say no to the next project. So you guys have to prioritize what your projects are.
Her recommendation would be no.
Not all of these grants are, like the electrical grant, for instance. If we were to get that big grant, I think we have like 5 years to spend that money. It's not something that has to be done in 2025.
Right.
We referred to the sidewalk grant a couple of times. It's a 2-year process just to get the grant. I mean, we're still,
Oh, yeah. No, and I have it.
we're
set
24
out.
we're 24 months from seeing
Yeah.
if we get that grant or not. So
Well,
there,
I don't mean to interrupt you, but just to correct you, we would know on the grant this year, but it's 24 months to where you can actually implement the
Right.
money. So you'd be looking at 2027 budget before you're actually spending construction
And,
costs there.
yeah, and I guess based off of our conversations, I did put the approximate years we'd be working on each individual project. But the other thing is every single one of these is reimbursement. You have to write the check for the entire amount before you will get anything back from anyone. So you do have to have some money in your accounts to write the checks. So if you don't have the money, you can't necessarily write the checks either.
Yeah, this grant is a misnomer in the interpretation of that. I mean, you gotta spend the money to get it back.
Yeah.
If you don't have the money to spend, you're not gonna get nothing back. And you're right, we need to the council can prioritize what we need to do. I'm obviously gonna have different priorities than Jeremy or the other councilmen. But we need to have a discussion about setting priorities, what we want to do as a city. And always remember that Band-Aid fix we talked earlier. It's better to put a Band-Aid than have an open sore. It's better. If you're talking triage, the concept of triage, you put your resources, you know, a Band-Aid fix is better than an open sore. So remember that in your planning.
It's really important how we move the money in this budget
It
season.
is, it's very important. That's what I
We've
see.
also talked about certain enterprises, trying to take them to being more profitable, and people have fought that, and the idea of putting money away and being profitable is less money transferred, or maybe money transferred from those enterprise. You hear Troy talk about it all the time. We gotta be profitable in all of our enterprises. We're missing on one. Every one of the others we've put in shape, we're missing on one. But you gotta have that, I don't wanna say luxury, but that flexibility as a council. So when you do prioritize, okay, this is where we wanna go, this is where we wanna see winter go, this is what we're going to appropriate fiscally into the budget to make it happen. The decisions that we made 6 years ago are so much different than, actually, you've got a lot more flexibility. In one more year, with one more right decision, you've created, now you're gonna make the history altering decisions going forward in this next
Your
year.
budgets are gonna look differently too. So one of the concerns that council was having is, oh, they're telling us they're budgeting for a project and then they don't do it, so then they spend it. We're taking those projects out of the actual street department, sanitation, whatever, and we're creating a project fund. So if this were to be, if we did go ahead with this on Monroe Street, and it's specifically for Monroe Street, it'd be a 500 fund. They could only use it for Monroe Street. Bailey's Park, once we get the bid documents back, know how much it's gonna cost us, it's gonna be a 500 fund. So that's gonna help you guys as council too, to be able to say, no, that money was only for that project.
That's right.
And so then it doesn't get spent somewhere else. Now, we're not doing that on the 600,000 for the streets and overlay, because that's ultimately part of their natural repairs and maintenance. But actual project base, like what DGR is helping us with, or anyone else helps us with, that will be separated apart. We saw what a mess it's made in water and sewer, because the project took 25 years instead of one. So, then they were trying to balance out their end of year expenses, and, well, it looks like we're not spending, but we are spending because that's project based, so this is just gonna make it a lot cleaner for everyone too. So it's a benefit to the department heads and a benefit to council.
It's not rocket science. We look at our overall budget, we look at our revenues coming in, we look at the availability of the funds that we have. And then we as a council, we set a priority for that. We can only do, here's what we agreed to do this year. There'll be some knockdown, drag out fights, yes. But to me, that's how you do it. We don't encumber and take on a bunch of other things that we cannot do based on this grant or that grant, which is a payback grant. We don't have the money for that. Pretty soon we're in a big, deep, dark hole. We don't want that. We don't want to go there.
I wanna circle back to what Jeremy had asked. You asked about, in the general fund, on the cash side, unappropriated funds, you started the year with 1,681,000. Now, Chandra and I have tried to build that up where at the end of the year, we were at a positive balance. When you tick down and then we transfer in what we need to stay positive, you could take the money from there. There is enough there, but then you gotta transfer in next year to cover the cost of operating, and you can find it. We have the cash to spend, back to Joe's conversation. We do have it there to spend, but then it's more that we have to transfer in from those enterprises. So, again, the goal, get the corrections bond paid off, have corrections transferring in for code enforcement, the police department, and over to 911. Then water, sewer, electrical become and sanitation now become, with the right decision, become the transfer to cover projects like these on the public works. We break that apart. It's, that's how this thing's gonna work going
Yeah, and
forward.
that's where our debt load comes in, managing our debt load in an appropriate fashion, like I think this council's been doing that.
We have.
And
We've
and
renewed-
it
we've-
looks good, but we need to continue that and get rid of that debt load
And where
that we've
you're,
been carrying on and drag on the city budget going forward. We gotta,
where you're talking utilities as well, if you actually get the grant and go forward with that, ultimately, because it's that 500 fund, you would be able to use general fund money to support the street portion and water sewer money. I don't think there's any sewer in this, but water money to support that too. So it wouldn't all have to come from one fund. You would be able to make that work as well, because it's specific to those projects.
I do see this as a priority. That's part of our commercial
Me too.
district.
I think,
It's a good project.
It
It's
is.
a priority, yes, I.
Government
Yeah.
agencies, business
Yeah,
sector.
everything, I mean, there's a lot of action going on in that. To me, that's a priority.
When would we know? When could we possibly know on the grant?
November. It'll be the
Of this
November DOT commission meeting, yep.
So,
If I may, as far as priorities, timelines go, if you don't want to dive into this in 2025 rather than doing an overlay, I would, there would be no harm in just saying, hey, we're going to do it as early as 2026. But, that would suggest the road's going to be how it is through 2025 as well. But at least at that point, you're going to know, how competitive the grant was. I mean, they're scoring it, if we get it or not. Because, I mean, if we get it, we can still do it in 26 or 27.
Without putting a $68,000 Band-Aid on it.
Right, without,
Yeah.
I would just hate to do that in 2025 and then, or 2024 and then get the grant and we're tearing it all up. And I just think there's gonna be challenges with the Band-Aid even then, so that would be, I mean, from my point of view, that's kind of the two options. Either you do a 2025 project with scope remains to be seen, grant dependent, or you just kind of, pump the brakes and wait and see what the grant is and make it a 2026 project, or later, grant dependent.
Don't rush it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no, it could certainly all come together in 2025. We got plenty of time for that. It's just, I would just advise against the Band-Aid if we're simultaneously applying for funding, I guess is my professional opinion.
When you don't have to set the budget for it during this budget cycle, because it's this 500 fund and all of that, you can ultimately wait until you, same as we just did with Bailey's Park. Ultimately, we knew that it was coming, we knew the grant was coming, but until we get the bid documents in, know the exact dollar amounts, because even, Jake and his team can do the best possibility to estimate what it's gonna be, but then bids come in and it's crazy high. We saw that happen on the highway project on this last one. So I would actually make that my recommendation to you. Don't even set the budget for this until we know that we've got it and we've got the bid documents. But you do have to remember then, don't spend the cash somewhere else. So there's those things too. And what you could do, rather than putting it into a budget form, you could create an outlay. This is specifically for this. You can do that for up to 5 years, 60 months, and put that money aside specifically for street improvements. So you do have that ability too. So then it doesn't get accidentally used because you forgot you had this one on the back burner type of
An
thing.
outlay in the general fund?
Yes.
Wow. What a novel idea in winter.
I see this as a 25 project.
On top of streets.
We'll determine that later.
Jake does need this. Does
Yeah,
need to
well-
know if you want to take this to council to approve their.
Yeah, because it's in front of you, so we have this task order set up for, basically us to kickstart our efforts on this project. As drafted, it includes topographic survey, which we'd start right away, and then preliminary design and preparation of the information and engineering report needed for the funding application. Wanted to get this in front of you and kind of get going, knowing that it may very well may be a 2025 project. Just, if you approve this and you go forward, it doesn't have to be a 2025 project. It's just gonna put us in a position to kind of meet the tightest timelines that are being proposed here, more or less. This doesn't include, final design or any construction side of that, not knowing what the size and scope of that project will be. That'll just get us kind of through phase one, and then once we know, hey, we're gonna bid 2 blocks in February 2025, once, or we're gonna bid 4 blocks in spring of 2026, whatever that looks like, we'll pivot from there more or less, but.
You're talking, it looks like 48,000.
Correct, that would be for,
Total.
total, and that would get us in a position where, we could very much make it a 2025 project.
That's my recommendation, is I say we go forward. I would recommend, if we want to make this one of our projects, I don't think if we make it the only project, but I think if this is one of our projects, I think we go forward with this in the plan that this is going to be a 2025 project. If we get the grant, great, that's just icing on the cake, but we can't put a schedule together according to whether we're going to get a grant or not. We have to have a plan, and we have to go forward with that plan, and if we get the grant, great, but our track record on this grant has not been good. We've applied for it 2 or 3 times, we have not gotten it. So this is probably, I don't know what you got. Did the criteria change for this? They changed some of the stuff in there this year?
It's the same criteria, they just.
It's becoming harder and harder to get.
Yeah, it's the utility criteria actually loosened up a little bit. So before, the utilities had to be bid a part of the project and all that. That's now since changed where it just has to be new within the last 5 years, and then you get the 50-point adder. Other criteria is that you can only get this grant once within a 5-year period. If you get it, a year before and you apply again, you get a 50-point, deduction. And for the sake of the scoring, 50 points is huge. I mean, a winning total might be 180 or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I think it is a competitive project. I wouldn't recommend that you move forward with the application if I didn't think it was. Obviously, there's no guarantees in grant applications, as everybody knows, and it wouldn't be uncommon for, to get this grant the second or third time applying. I mean, we've seen that too. But yeah, it's got the right criteria with adjacent businesses and condition of the existing street and all that to have a pretty competitive application.
But in the meantime, the street's not getting any better, so gotta do something about that. Comments or questions? That's all I have.
Are you guys saying yes to send this to full council?
It's a starting point. I don't know, if we're gonna move forward in any fashion, we probably should. And, I think it's a priority, and we find the 600,000 this year to maybe put in the budget next year.
Well, this street here in particular, if we do it the way we're talking about doing it, you need to do this portion of it with Jay, because it's gonna have to be, it's not just gonna be a mill and overlay. We're gonna reconstruct the street in some fashion, so we need our engineers to do that for us.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
we're proposing, on-street parking, rearrangements, sidewalk, ADA accessibility improvements, I mean, the whole 9 yards here.
to move forward in any fashion, we need to approve this. Is that correct? I mean, is that the way you look at it? That's the way that's the way I'm looking.
Unless you want to throttle it back to just make it another mill and overlay street, that's the other option.
Kicking it down the road, kicking the can down the road. Come on, Troy. Got enough of that.
What do you think, Kelly? Give us your,
Kelly, can we do phase 1 with the budget that we have coming up in '25 to make it work, squeak it by?
Hope so.
I'm putting you on the spot.
Depends on what you give them for a budget for
I know,
25.
I know, that's what I was gonna say. I know what you get.
I think it ties it all in good. I think it's a very important project, but with City Hall and a post office.
Well, yeah.
I mean, it's
The main
just,
businesses,
you guys coming up with the money is the biggest thing.
Yeah, it's a big item. Money's a big item.
Well,
Every
hopefully
year
our
it just
council
keeps falling
can,
apart more and more.
we don't have, hopefully we can get a little bit of street work done and phase one of Monroe done and still a little bit of mill and overlay, just so I hate to abandon that for a year or two because I think there's people that are waiting for their street to be
I
redone.
agree. I like that every year.
So maybe we back off on some water and sewer projects or something next year. Whatever we gotta do, we can figure it out during budget season, but
Yeah.
I think we need to, plan on
There'll be some conversation.
a Monroe project.
Yeah,
Well,
our
no
construction's
priority
really going
project.
ahead. I think we're doing good for
So
the
Jody said
water.
this before the meeting started, and you weren't in here yet,
There's so
but
much
council
old
was.
stuff in the
We did
ground.
go through revenues, and I'm gonna get those entered into the worksheet. You guys will get those later today, because starting Tuesday next week, we'll really delve into the expense side of the budget, so.
Well, I think, it's probably gonna be premature to do it during budget, even during budgeting season, because we're still gonna be a little bit premature there. But the electrical numbers are changing, the water numbers are changing. With those, the sewer numbers are gonna change. So by the end of this year, probably for the first time since I've been in this Public Works Director's position, we'll have a very, very clear picture of what our revenues will look like for 2025.
Good.
I'm
You're
afraid
saying
it'll be after.
on the metering side of things, you mean? Yeah, yeah.
On our
I'm afraid it'll
revenue
be
side,
after the budget is set.
yeah. In Public Works anyways, I can't speak for the jail and all that, but in Public Works, in your electric, water, and sewer, we're going to be able to say at the end of this year that these are pretty firm numbers on projected revenues. We're very close to having all of our meters done right now on both water and sewer. We're within a couple hundred meters or less on both, in both of those entities, so that's huge. We haven't known for 3 years how many meters we're reading, if they were reading accurately.
2017 was the last year all of them were.
It's been a while.
It's slowly coming together. That's all I got.
Okay, that's enough.
You want some good news?
Yeah.
You guys got your free and clear title on your plow truck. It's paid off. You officially own it. So there's your good news.
The orange one?
Yeah.
Boy, we can ask for another one.
She did.
Didn't say that.
Kelly,
You already
Kelly,
got it.
Kelly.